So going back to that night, when you saw Osama bin Laden, did he look the way you thought he would look? I mean, when I see people, like celebrities, for example, in real
Right.
life, they never look like what I'd seen in pictures and on television and whatnot. And so we'd all seen pictures of Osama and videos of Osama. When you saw him in person, did he look the same?
His face did. I definitely what had it 100% for me in the half a second I looked at him. It was his nose. I recognized his nose. I'd seen it before, like everyone else, thousands of times. I was surprised at how tall he was, and I was surprised at how skinny he was. And
Hmm.
he looked afraid, and his beard was white, almost gray, because he hadn't put in the dye that he used to do for his videos. But just the way he was maneuvering, his wife Amal, who had been shot in the leg before I got in the room, she was in front of him, and I was just again, she's in front of him, the kid's on the floor, but I'm close enough to take a. She was short, he was tall. I was a good shot, so it wasn't a big worry for me. I thought he was going to blow up anyway, so my concern wasn't am I going to hit him? It's like, well, I'm tired of thinking about blowing up. Let's get it over with and see what it feels like. It was just a weird environment where I can look back, close my eyes, see exactly the boots that I was wearing, and turning the corner and seeing Bin Laden standing there. But I was with the best team in the world. The guy in front of me was the one who was brave. I just followed him up there for the tired of thinking about it.
Hmm. So uh, let's talk about whether or not he was really killed, because
Sure.
a lot of people say there's no body, no proof, right? How do you know it was real? So that there's a lot of theories around whether or not Osama bin Laden was really killed. Um,
Mhm.
the U.S. never released photos. First of all, did
I
they
know.
ask you to bring him back alive, or what was the? Because you said originally when they brought you into the room and they said you're going to go get this thing and
Yeah.
you're going to bring the thing back to us. I mean, did they say you bring the thing back to us alive?
No, not really. It was technically a capture, or sorry, it was a kill capture, not a capture kill. And we had a thing at SEAL Team 6, like if you flew me from Virginia to this part of the world, we didn't get dressed up for nothing. So
Hmm.
if you send us, he's basically going to die. And that was just it. He had less than a second to convince me not to kill him, and he didn't do it. As
Okay.
far as I mean, as far as a lot of people don't believe it, but also a lot of people probably can't find Mexico on the map. So I don't take that too seriously. And I realize that I'm basically one of two people that saw what happened. Um, but you got to figure Amal bin Laden was right there. That's bin Laden's wife. So I killed the guy who was in bed with bin Laden's wife. So either way, someone's going to shoot him. But it was just me. I
Hmm.
mean, it was we wouldn't have we wouldn't have spent all that time trying to go get him. And we have professional photography of his body when we brought him back to Bagram. Like the pictures are there. They're not pleasant. I mean, it looks. A lot of people want justice served. They don't need to know what it looks like, but I think they should release them just for that alone. They're there. I know Congress people who've seen them. They've actually
Yeah.
joked with me and said they're actually in a file cabinet at Langley, and not even like under lock and key. They're just sitting there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and for people that don't want to believe it, that's I at this point, if you don't believe it at this point, I can't convince them. It doesn't really bother me. I know we did it,
Hmm.
and most importantly, the people who lost loved ones on the most horrific day of their life, 9/11, and they said there'll never be closure, but having a name with a face, the healing process has definitely started. So thanks, and that's all that really matters to me. I saw it happen, and it was
Right.
just an honor to be a part of that team.
I think that's why people have the skepticism is, of course, there was no photos released. As you said, you think they should just release the photos. But the reason why they don't release the photos is they say, well, they're too graphic or they could incite violence or something, right? And the fact that his body was reportedly buried at sea within 24 hours.
Mhm.
So we have no body, we have no photographs, and it was 10 years after 9/11, and so America was growing weary. Are you going to get this guy? I mean, it makes us look bad, right? It makes our military look bad. It makes our military look weak that we cannot get the guy right after 9/11. I mean, that the fact that it took 10 years, way too long that he was
It did.
able to evade us with all of our sophisticated surveillance, CIA. I mean, we've got the best military in the world, the best surveillance in the world. We've got the best of the best, and yet we can't find this guy that's like hiding in caves for 10 years or something. And then finally, so then it almost just, for those that, and I don't have a thinking either way on whether or not the guy was killed. I'm neutral on, I'm the type that says, yeah, I could believe he was killed by you. I could believe that he wasn't, like, whatever. But I could see why people would think he wasn't actually killed. And that is just the US saying, we got to end this. We got to put it to rest. but that's super risky. I mean, then you look at the other side of that. Like, why would we lie about it? If we lied
Yeah.
about it, there's always the risk that then the Osama bin Laden comes out a year later and says, "I'm not dead. Here I am." What a
Yeah.
farce. And then we
That
look
was,
even
I
more
mean,
dumb.
that'd be a video I'd watch. It's not coming. And I mean, even Al Qaeda confirmed he was dead. They actually made a joke about it. We were intercepting some of their phone calls a few days later, and this is a true story. Two Al Qaeda hardened Al Qaeda fighters were talking, and one guy said, "Who turned him in?" And the other guy jokingly said, "He turned himself in." And the other guy goes, "Why?" And he goes, "He was living in the same house for 5 years with three women. He called him himself." So just they're and I remember
uh,
hearing that like, wow, I guess everyone's got jokes, even these terrorists. But yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know why they won't release it, and I didn't see him get buried at sea. I did see we handed him off to the army in Bagram Airfield, and they flew him to the carrier that allegedly dumped him at sea. But I didn't see it, and I mean, even now with what we're finding out about the government and after the lockdowns, like you at this point in my life, you have to convince me the world's not flat, that we actually went to the moon. Like, there's
mhm.
so much. So if someone doesn't believe I was in Bin Laden's bedroom, that's up to them. And I mean, I'll tell my story, and if I ever get the pictures, I'll show you. But I mean,
Yeah.
I know it
The
happened, and that's
only
all I can say.
The only other thing that would make me think, okay, maybe he wasn't really, maybe he killed a different guy, was like maybe if to go along with that thread of thinking, would be that maybe the government knew that you guys had actually killed him earlier than that. And it was like, oh shit, we killed him already and we didn't realize it. And he's been dead for a while, but now we kind of miss out on that moment. So maybe then we're going to stage it, or I don't know. Like that would be maybe
No, I
the
mean,
only
these are
reason.
all legit questions. I mean, we're not exactly in a time where it's like just trust the government. Like
Right,
that's so
right,
often.
right, right.
I yeah, it's I again the
But
only
you were
reason I'm so
there,
confident,
you did it,
I saw
you
it.
say and you're sure it was him.
100%. There's no doubt. I mean, even I talked to his daughters that saw him die, like, and just the way they said, "Okay, you got him." That's Sheikh Osama, and to see the response of his family. I mean, again, not everybody's a terrorist, and they just got woken up and saw their dad get blasted. So it's. I
Yeah,
mean, it's real for me. I saw it go down, and that's. I mean, also with the conspiracies, are like, well, he was working with the CIA. Yeah, I mean, we were arming the Mujahideen to fight the Russians. Charlie Wilson's war. We were sending Stinger missiles over to them. Everybody everybody works for us at some point, you know. So
mhm,
again, I wasn't involved with that. I was just born. So,
yeah, so, I was just gonna say, speaking of being born, I realized the other day that the kids that were born, now there are adults now, who have never lived a day on this planet without us being at war, the war
that's
on
crazy.
terror, it is
It
crazy. I
is.
mean, they've just
It
grown
is.
up in this environment.
It's too bad too because they're at war, but 9/11 is not real to them because it's in the history books. When I mean, because I go home to Montana, I talk to high schools, and the seniors weren't even alive. I mean, not even
Right,
close. So
right,
it's almost like someone coming back and explaining Pearl Harbor and then looking at pictures. It's yeah, it happened,
yeah.
but it's not real. So it's the same with 9/11, and then for them to just be at war all over the world, it is an odd time too. I mean, especially with social media, with the algorithms coming in through TikTok. We're the only country that encourages our youth to hate our own country. So it's like it's a wild time.
Well, I mean, you look at these kids that have only known this war on terror. Here you are, you killed Osama bin Laden in what, 2011?
11.
Now we're 14 years out of that. I mean, that should have been the end of it, right? I mean, why wasn't that the
Yeah.
end? Why didn't we just say, okay, Osama bin Laden's dead. We got what we wanted. Took us 10 years. Let's get the hell out of here. Instead, we've continued this war on terror. And I think it causes a question. And I'm curious what your thoughts on it. Now that the country has shifted mentality wise, especially Middle Eastern wars, war on terror, things have not gotten better as far as
No,
terrorism and the groups.
no.
The ISIS was much worse than Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda now has taken over Syria, and we're cheering it on. I mean, that alone. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's sad. We've been arming Al Qaeda. We were doing that. That's why Benghazi was there, trying to arm what they would call the moderate rebels to defeat the Assad regime. When the moderate rebels were being lied to because that's Al Qaeda, and we're sending guns to them. That's just how it went down. And I mean, Bin Laden was very important because he's a figurehead of the worst attack on this country, and that does help with the healing process. But people are going to step up. Like Hamza bin Laden, I think is still alive. We said he was dead. He's running the training camps in Afghanistan, the country that we left all of our stuff behind. And basically, as of recently, we're sending them hundreds of millions of dollars a week still under the guise of foreign aid or whatever the humanitarianism. It's going to Al Qaeda and the Haqqani network. But I mean, even with Iraq, Iraq's one of those things where we never should have invaded. Also, we never should have left the way we did. But I mean, me thinking back to it now and all the people I've killed, and because we were doing strategic hits in houses, so all the people that I killed up front, close, like really close, same room. Um, the thoughts are now, I just killed the guy in front of his two sons. Did I kill a terrorist, or did I make two more?
Yeah.
You got to think ahead of what you're doing. You got to know your heritage, know your history, know the lay of the land and what their history is too. Like the countries we go to are a hell of a lot older than this country, and I've seen it
Yeah.
before where we got two wars going on, and people will switch where their unit is going. I've seen before where a commander is briefing the guys and says, "All right, here's the thing. They were supposed to go to Iraq, now they're going to Afghanistan." And so the slide says Iraq, and someone in the crowd goes, "Well, sir, we're going to Afghanistan, not Iraq." And he goes, "Iraq, Afghanistan, what's the difference?" It's like, well, a lot. And you shouldn't even be in charge if you have to say that. There's a hell of a lot of difference because people don't
Right.
realize, even if in Afghanistan, the Pashtun people don't want foreigners there, but Al Qaeda are foreigners also. They're from Arab countries. They're foreigners. We're foreigners. You got to understand the dynamics. You got to understand the cultures, the cultural sensitivity. Even we didn't care about that at first because we weren't educated enough to understand if you go into someone's house, regardless of how bad it is, if you desecrate the Quran in front of them, you're not going to win their hearts and minds. And you've got to be
Mhm.
smart about that. We started to take women with us who are the cultural team that we started after years to realize, okay, because we're handling their women and children, they're not going to like us. We need women to do that. It's more respectful. Stuff like that you wouldn't think about in combat, but if you're going to stay that long, you better, because it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what your intentions are. You stay long enough, you are an occupier. And unfortunately, that's how we are looked at.
Yeah, I mean, there was a letter that recently went viral a couple of years ago of Bin Laden, the letter to America that he wrote back in. When did he write this letter? I think he wrote it in 2002, but it went
Yeah, it
viral
was
a year
2002.
ago, year and a half ago, right? And in the letter, he says he basically lists out his grievances. And now, when people read back at that letter, the reason it went viral was because they were like, well, we kind of agree with the guy. I mean, we agree with Osama bin Laden. I mean, he's basically saying, look, I'm mad at you because US military intervention in Muslim countries, you shouldn't be here. And I think
Yeah.
that's a legitimate feeling, right? I mean, if they were over here on our soil, invading our country or building bases in our country, I bet you anything Americans would be rising up and trying to kick their asses out. Like that would be the first thing that we tried to do. And so they were saying, look, military intervention, like you guys being over here on our soil in our neck of the woods, we don't want you here. Um, Economic exploitation, moral and cultural corruption, right? He
Mhm.
kind of lists off all of these things of basically you're just coming over here and you don't belong. You're a bunch of foreigners. And a lot of people now look at that and say, yeah, I mean, here we are with young adults that are now serving in the military, the young adults who are the recruits, they have never known life without us being in
Mhm.
this war on terror in the Middle East. And when they talk about military morale is down and kids are and the recruits, they can't get the recruits. And one of the things that's not even being talked about right now as to why the military had to kind of move to this towards a woke agenda was because they couldn't recruit and they were trying to get anybody and everybody. And they were like, we'll take the trans kids because they got nowhere else to go. Like they're willing
Mhm.
to sign up, right? And they don't ask the reason for that. It's not like the military went woke because the military was woke and went woke. It's kind of went woke out of necessity. Like who can we grab? Oh well, we'll take because the other kids weren't willing to come anymore. They're like, no, I'd rather go to college than go off to this war that has been going on my entire
Entire
life,
life.
like
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
my whole life. And you guys got Saddam Hussein, you got Osama bin Laden, and you still won't get out of there. And you created ISIS. There's a new, and they're worse. And so what's going on here? A lot of I think there's that the letter went viral and people looked at it and said, yeah, Osama bin
Mhm.
Laden was right all along. What do you make
Yeah,
how do
I
you
mean, it did go viral, but
yeah.
the issue okay, I can agree with what they're saying as far as, yeah, going to someone else's land where they don't want you. That's fair. What they didn't realize is that he also said how he wants to get along is we'll just put Sharia law all over the world. And for people to think they have it bad here now, go live under Sharia law. Go check out the West Bank or check out the Gaza Strip or go to Syria. You want to see Sharia law. That's not a good place. Whereas for Palestine, they would last half a day in Palestine. So there's that. So the letter was well written because he was a smart guy and he had a big following. But for people to believe
Mhm.
that maybe he was a good guy is way out of line. And I blame our public school system and the TikTok for that nonsense because they're feeding them anti-American stuff. Now, the Al Qaeda thing, they really got a boost when we went to try to help Kuwait against Saddam Hussein, because we had the Soviets had just left Afghanistan. Bin Laden had the Mujahideen, and he actually offered to Saudi Arabia, his home country, we can come back and defend Saudi Arabia so that the Iraqis won't come in to here. I mean, we might not be able to get them out of Kuwait. We went in there, Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, obviously because we have a lot of interest in oil, and let's not BS ourselves. That's what we're going
Right.
for. The world economy, the oil, we love it, even though we never take it, which again I think spoils the war. We should, but if again, but I don't think we should invade. So I don't want to sound like a warmonger. So there is that to say, and we're not good at putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Like maybe they don't want us here, and maybe we're not solving their problems. I mean, we tried to build how many schools in Afghanistan? They don't want any of those.
Mhm.
I had so many people in Afghanistan. I lived in Afghanistan in the cities, and I had so many guys say, "Why would I send my sons to school when I can just teach them how to farm?" And that makes sense, and that's how they live, and that's how they want to live. So yeah, the with the if I was a kid that age, especially under the last administration, with the confusion with the woke, which where we're going with green energy, all that stuff, I wouldn't have joined either. I would have discouraged people from joining. Now, especially under Pete Hegseth, who's making changes as Secretary of Defense, I would encourage them to now. And hopefully, I mean, it's tough to say what we're going to do because you got Syria cooking back up again. Obviously, there's Iran all the time with nukes, stuff going on in Israel. You got Yemen, and the hostages allegedly going to release all of them, even the dead ones, which I don't even want to get into today. There are places we need to go, and just saying no, it's such a we need to get back to our roots, the triage of forward defense, alliance, solidarity, and most importantly, deterrence. A strong military makes a strong United States, and a strong United States makes a safer world. It's that it. However, we don't need boots on the ground everywhere. We don't need boots on the ground now in the Gaza Strip. If we're just going around to save people, look at Sudan, look at the Congo, look at the genocides going on all over the place. There's been civil war in Syria the whole time, even though we're getting our mitts in there. Yeah, we should pull back. And same with NATO. Yeah, you know what, Europe, it's on you. Why don't you do something for a change? Things I agree
Yeah.
with that too. I'm really tired of seeing people leave the Pentagon with 4 stars, start making millions of dollars in the military-industrial complex, so they can send people to war they've never been to, even if they are a general. Just because you've been to Iraq or Afghanistan doesn't mean you've been to combat. People know who I'm talking about. So watching people get rich while young people die. And again, if 27-year-old Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill could hear 48-year-old Rob O'Neill saying this, he'd be pissed off because back in
Mhm.
the day, I was all about America, apple pie, and I'll invade anyone. But now that I'm seeing the truth and actually just trying to take the time to understand other people, I think I like to say I'm a little bit smarter, but maybe I've just lost a lot of brain cells. It's one or the other.
Do you think so? So just to clarify, do you think we should be in the Middle East right now?
Well, I mean, we should have kept a base in Afghanistan. Should we be in? It's tough. No, I don't think so. I think we should assist Israel. They're going to handle everything. A naval presence. We should knock out the Houthis because we got to knock out the proxies before we get to Iran. Because the bottom line, the number one thing that we do not need is Iran getting nuclear weapons. They will use them. And I don't know how many I've banged my head against the wall so many times saying, hey, they're gonna lie to you. Negotiations aren't gonna work. You need to handle something with the mullahs in Iran, and the way to do that is with a coup. We're not gonna, I mean, yes, we can bomb them and destroy them, but it's so complex because it's not the Iranian people that we have a problem with, it's the clerics. And if they can, but
Mhm.
the problem is whenever they rise up, which we've seen, they start to rise up whenever a woman's hung to death or stoned to death because she's showing too much hair. They rise up, we blow them off. Our media stops covering them. Our politicians do nothing. So they don't. I mean, we're to a point now. Hopefully, we're changing. Where if I was over there, I'd be like, why would I trust the United States right now? I'm not going to risk my family's life because they're going to say they're going to come save us, which they never end up doing.
Yeah, but who have we saved?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like we've gone over there with, we're going to bring you American freedom. We'll roll through Iraq and we'll all be friends. That's how our government was thinking. And I just went in to
Yeah.
shoot people. But it's like if you think about, I mean, that started in 1993. Once we told the Shia we're going to rise up, we'll take you all the way to Baghdad and take down Saddam, who's a Sunni. We told them that they rose up, we ditched them, and then he slaughtered the Shia. That's like
Why?
there's a bad pattern of us doing that a lot.
Right. Do you what? Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think we have not been able to save anybody? Do you think it's a matter of we act like we're tougher than we actually are, and our military
No,
is not capable?
we pretend that people want to live like we do, and they don't. A lot of people do, a lot of people don't want our style of democracy. A lot of people in certain parts of the world look at places like Hollywood and Las Vegas and think that we're sinners. They
Yeah.
don't want us to come over just because we think Jeffersonian democracy is great. They don't. And
Hmm.
again. You can't just be I'm the toughest, we're Americans, you should love us type nonsense. You need to see the way they're thinking and why. Just the same way that you run a business. Like, yes, the buck stops with me, but I need to understand why you come to work and how can I maybe align those two more so we both move forward together so we can be successful together. I think and this is just my opinion, maybe it gets to a point in leadership in both politics and the military where eventually all you care about is your own personal power and your own personal wealth. And I've been saying about the
Yeah.
military, one of the issues we have is the second you stop carrying your own luggage, you need to resign because you're no longer a soldier. You've got people carrying your stuff. You're not making good decisions. You're looking at your next career.
This has been a clip from the full Kim Iverson show, which you can watch by visiting KimIversonShow.com. The show is live Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for about an hour, 2 hours. We go live, so don't miss the whole thing. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.